The interesting point is that the level of carbon dioxide and methane at this point today in this is unprecedented in the last almost 1 million years. This is the record from Antarctic ice cores, which shows you that never in the last 650,000 years the level of carbon dioxide was not more than 280 parts per million. But now it is about 380 parts per million, so unprecedented.
Professor Goswami, thank you very much for that extremely informative introduction, which has provided a very helpful context for the films that you're going to see this afternoon and for the discussion that we'll be having. I want to recognize the work and the partnership that we've already undertaken with IITM, with Professor Goswami and Dr. Shiralkar. And I hope that we'll have much more exchange, because with the scientific community in India, we don't have to preach to the converted. We don't have to explain the science of climate change, because already our scientific community is in the vanguard. And India, as you well know, Dr. Rajendra Pachauri has been the chair of the IPCC for many years, and we have some of the leading contributors to climate science, I'm sure notably also in this room. What we are seeking to do, however, with the event today, this afternoon, of which this is a part, is launch a major national awareness-raising and a mobilization campaign around climate change and its implications for our future.
The basic problem is that we don't know how in the next 100 years human beings are going to behave. This is one of the most difficult things to model. At the same time, many processes are non-linear, like the temperature of Leh going up by 2.5 degrees a year cannot be extended over the next 100 years. It will be something like 250 plus or something like that. So we just was Pune last week. This is the weather office which was flooded. But this is not climate change. Let's remember that. So this is something that we have to accept as the realities of life. Again, the impacts of climate change are not uniform. They're different over the oceans and the land. And the positive side is that everybody is talking about.
Whether the super cyclone that it depicted was a scientific event, was due to global warming or not, I think Dr. Kedkar has answered that it was not. Second film was about Sundarbans and water level rise. Yes, it is one of the causes. But tell about the population growth in India. For example, we go on talking about everything else but the population growth. In none of the films I heard a single reference to the population growth in the world. It is a micro scale as compared to the glaciers that we have in Himalayas. Are we in a position to repeat these experiments anywhere? Yes, it can certainly solve problems of those 5 or 6 villages that have come up as far as the water supply, drinking water supply is concerned. The global warming that is being taken place, as was shown by Dr. Goswami here, is largely because of carbon dioxide, 60%. Or more than 60% if I recollect your figures, and 40% or less than 40% because of CH4, methane and nitrous oxide. What are we going to do to solve the problems of this growth in population is the first question we should answer, and then talk of the global climate change and what we should do about agriculture.
The reason that we are here is to hear about what people think about these films, yes, but it's not just the films are just an illustration. So let me begin with that, the motivation of the films. This is not a UK government organized event. We are not a UK government funded body, non-governmental organization. We are all Indian citizens. We care about our country, We're concerned about the lack of leadership we show on an issue which we believe is a major civilizational threat facing our lives.
Before more than 20 years, I was reading related with global cooling. Now this is global warming. So global cooling and global warming, these are the cycles which I come to know as per my knowledge, that these are the natural cycles, and after some years we may discuss over here about global cooling, maybe.
Satya said because of population growth, the problem has arisen. I think personally, let the population grow, but we should not clear land and remove trees from it. The real culprit is clearing of the land. We do not emit carbon dioxide, so we don't cause any harm to the nature.
How the green gas emission of each country is measured? You just shown in your slide that India is producing 1128 million tons and all that. Or is it an international pressure? And second question to Madam is that you just told China is a proactive, but how this motorized way from Tibet side for Olympics they are creating?
We have had natural and man-made disasters. Natural disasters may have been the wrath of gods, which we could not control.
As far as India is concerned, it is not that we are not taking any action against that. One of the points was salinity of the water in that Sundarbans. Actually in Gujarat, we had carried out the jobs where the sea has been, sea water has been stopped to go inside the rivers and make the water saline.
India is continuing to make measurements for several years now. Basically, how you do it is you identify the sources of emissions. If you have an idea about what are the sources and you know how much is burnt, then you can make an estimate of, these are called inventories. So inventories, a good deal of inventory work has been done in the last several years by several organizations in the country. It is not exhaustive, however. It needs more work, and that is why more work is going on. Also, you need a continuous measurement of carbon dioxide, methane at certain locations so that their variability is also recorded and how they are changing. So that is also some effort is going on. One station at Leh, Ladakh has been set up where continuous measurement is now going on at a pristine size. There are also other stations at Pondicherry and other places where these carbon dioxide measurements are continuously going on. Even in my institute, we are going to lower level. So that is local. But you want to know what is the local source and what is the global background. So all these things are going on. But the inventory, based on the inventory, these numbers have come out. And these inventories are not absolute, but I think it is pretty close. Who is responsible? And whether, I think for this receding of the Himalayas is associated with the increase in the temperature. Increase in the temperature is associated with greenhouse gases quantity. And there, globally, everybody is responsible. So what can be done? And can we do something? I think we can do something. Everybody can do something. As I mentioned, we have to cut down we have to find a strategy where without hampering the growth, you reduce energy consumption.
I want to reply on the question that you asked, sir, about proactiveness, and leadership, about China. Now, you know, there are governments who are in climate denial, as I would characterize it, and then there are governments who are in climate reality, The Chinese government in the last 8 to 10 years in particular has moved into the second category. It's a government which has become extremely serious about the political and the economic implications of climate change for it as a country. There are a number of factors why it's very, very concerned. Now, and I'll just give you a few illustrations, One of the reasons is because it has been suffering an unprecedentedly long drought in the northwest of the country. Its capital city has been affected by that, Beijing. Beijing's water table is receding on the average by about 1 meter every year. And you know how much construction there's been in that city. The water scarcity issue, the water security issue, and desertification, the fact that Beijing now is subject to almost on a multiple times a year basis sandstorms, which is making the city uninhabitable. So there are real concerns about the viability of Beijing as a capital city and all of the implications that that has for the governance, the political economy, the economy of the country. The other reason, of course, is agricultural productivity. Only 17% of the whole of the Chinese landmass has arable land. And according to the study that I mentioned to you earlier, which was produced by 80 of the most prominent scientists in China at the end of 2006, it was released. They say that they are going to suffer anything between 5 to 15% productivity losses in agriculture from now until 2020, I think it is, or 2030. So they already have national contingency strategies for how to deal with the various different dimensions of climate change that they're very concerned about. Now, the other issue that they're concerned about is sea level rise. Much of the population in China, most of the 1 billion people, are actually not in the hinterlands, they're on the coasts. Shanghai is a city with 40 million people. It's a city now which has become the heartbeat, effectively. The global economic center of gravity is moving to Shanghai and that part of the world. And yet Shanghai is a city which is tremendously at risk of sea level rise.
There was a question about how the greenhouse gases are correlated with the fossil fuel consumption of each country, largely. Because that is the main cause for greenhouse gas emissions, that is carbon dioxide, mainly carbon dioxide I'm talking of. If you take US, the figures are more than 7,100, China 5,000, Russia 2,000, India 1,900, and Japan about 1,400 million tons. This is 2004 year figures. But if you take per capita emissions of these countries, India is lowest. And that will be surprising because naturally about the population. India's per capita contribution of GHG emissions is 2 tons. China comes next, 4 tons. Japan comes next with 11 tons. Russia comes with 14 tons. And US with 24 tons. Now you know where the shoe is pinching. And that is where we had to go ahead with curtailing those greenhouse gas emissions per capita. You are not in a position to wish away the population pressures. Population is going to grow. But what is important is go for non-conventional energy sources, which don't produce greenhouse gas emissions.
When Galileo found that the earth was round and when Copernicus found that the sun was not moving around the earth but the other way around, he didn't ask the Pope, what should I say? When Newton had his apple falling on his head, he didn't ask Charles II, what should I tell of gravitation? These days, the scientists ask everybody, what should I say? This is causing all the problem. They should say what it is and tell us what is science and what is politics. We will separate out. That's all that I would like to say.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that means it's a wrap. Thank you very, very much for your attention. My apologies to those of you who weren't able to get your comments into us. Please, however, stay in touch with us. You can reach us through our website or csmworld.org, or please send us a message at info@csmworld if you have any thoughts, suggestions as to how we can take this conversation further. We hope to be back in September in Pune and to be working with your city government and many of you on this agenda. Thank you very much.